Okay, back up again. As I was saying, there's a tremendous need for additional mental health treatment capacity across the world and in countries like Liberia. The Carter Center was aware of this because they had been doing a bunch of work in Liberia around peace programs, and there was a civil war that took place over a long period of time in Liberia, and many people were affected by that civil war. So they were seeing relatively high incidents of PTSD and other mental health issues, and so Carter Center was invited in by the Liberian government. That's the way the Carter Center takes on projects in other countries. They have to be invited in. They were invited in to work on increasing mental health capacity and understanding of mental health in the community. And we, that is Georgia Tech, through this Computing for Good class, consulted with the Carter Center on essentially three different aspects. One was we developed reporting software that was called the Patient Encounter Form (PEF) that clinicians would use after they had seen a patient. They could use it during, but in practice that didn't happen. They used it after they saw a patient to record in privacy protected ways some characteristics of that encounter that could be used to help improve the program. Um, uh, we also and I was the one who was fortunate to do this. Traveled to Liberia twice a year in order to train clinicians in how to use the software. So the way the program was structured, there was a cohort of clinicians in a 6-month training course. So I went twice a year to train each new cohort of clinicians in how to use the software. There was also some training basically in how to use the laptop, because that was not widely available and common knowledge amongst the clinicians. It might probably a bit different today, but when this got started in 2012, that was the case. And I also provide some consulting research on what to purchase. And this again, 2012, they purchased netbooks, which were a kind of low cost laptop of the time, uh, and and then there was software installed on those, in addition to ours, other kind of productivity software, Microsoft Suite, for clinicians to use. And then we did some data analysis and visualization. And this is a picture from, I believe, the first graduation of a cohort. And this is a sort of handing over of technology, including this gigantic surge protector, um, because the electrical power grid was quite dirty in Liberia. And so if you were going to use anything electronic, it was really valuable to have surge protector in place. So the work that was the major focus was this software development. And over a period of several years, um, uh, undergraduates and master's level students worked on a set of versions of the software. The version 1.0 um, was deployed for use starting in January of 2011. It was web based. It had some things that were appealing and some things that were not. Um, and so, and actually, a key element of the software throughout all of its instances was that it needed to be possible to use it um, offline and then upload the results when there was internet connectivity. So this is an example of a really important aspect about the context. Um, uh, there were many parts of the country where there was no internet access, and so clinicians would see patients in clinic settings, and frequently in those settings when they were seeing patients, they would not have online access, and so the software had to be built uh, to be usable offline and then upload online. So version 2.0 was built in fall 2011. This is not a coincidence. We offered this class only in the fall. So fall 2010, version 1.0, fall of 2011, version 2.0, and that was deployed for use starting in June of 2012. Rather than being web-based, this was an app with a much simpler installation, a simple Java install, and it integrated an element that was quite important, which was a unique but privacy preserving patient ID generation. There was then some data cleaning and visualization work done in 2013. That is, by that time, clinicians were reporting data. That effort was not exceptionally well done. And so then there was data cleaning and visualization rebuilt in fall 2014, and refined in the spring and deployed for use. So this is, so you can see here, this was a software development effort that went on over 4 or 5 years and included this patient encounter software plus back-end data cleaning and then visualization of the results. Another incredibly important part, besides the software development, in fact, at least as important as the software development, was the software maintenance. And this turned out to be quite a significant challenge, and is quite a significant challenge for any software technology projects. So we can't build software that doesn't need maintenance, right? Microsoft can't build software that doesn't need maintenance. So and when you are doing software development, say in a project-based class, the class ends, right? In some cases, the students continue to work in independent study types of experiences. This was a master's student, Greg Yori, who worked on the software as part of a master's project, but all students eventually graduate, and that really posed a problem for the maintenance of this software, and frankly of any software that gets developed by student teams. So Greg graduated, he went to Google, and for quite a period of time after leaving Georgia Tech and going to Google, he continued to maintain this software. That's what he looked like, I guess, back in around the time he was graduating. More recently, he looks a little different, and he, even up until fall of 2018, was doing software maintenance for us. That is, that something would break, I would send him an email. If he was busy at work, I wouldn't hear for a little bit, but I always heard back eventually. And when he had a chance, in his free time, he would reboot the server or improve the robustness of the server. So that was a software sustainability path that worked, although it had severe limitations because it really relied on the goodwill of Greg Yori, and his willingness to provide additional time, his free time, to work on the project. Let me go on to talk about the second project. So the second project also got its start within the Computing for Good class. And as I said earlier, this was a collaboration with Emory Nursing. And Emory Nursing was a stakeholder with other providers in providing health to migrant farm workers and their children down in Moultrie, Georgia. So these migrant farm workers would come for the harvesting season with their families, and had very little regular access to health care. So Emory nurses and nurses in training would go down to Moultrie for 2 weeks. They set up in a school gym, and kids and the families would rotate between stations where they would get a variety of health services, including things like vision checks, but also basic health checks. And they were using paper records for these patients. And actually, in the evenings, they would also go into the field and see migrant farm workers in the field. The kids were seen during the day in the school, but the adults who were working would be seen in the field. So the project here was to create an electronic version of these records, and also make it possible for all these different stations to be using those records and reporting into those records. So that was the project. Here, the software development happened again over a couple year time period. Version 1.0 in fall 2013. An undergraduate worked on it further in the spring of 2014 and went to Moultrie during this 2-week session to see firsthand what the conditions were of that deployment. And then a second version was built in fall 2014 and refined again in spring 2015. So this project was kind of nicely contained in that that idea was in a box to have Wi-Fi, to create Wi-Fi access and forms that could be filled out within this class building setting. So what happened after that? So as I said, this happened refined in spring 2015. So if you look at the slide deck, you'll see this email. This is from one of the students on the team, Brian, to the two other students, Jackson and An, as well as to me. And what it says is, "Hey guys, I have some sad news. Looks like the county, Moultrie, where the program runs, does not want them to use the application. Please read Elizabeth's email and my response. Don't let this get you down too much. We were able to rally together and produce a great application. The solution in the real world does not always get deployed or used, but we did our best. I want to thank you," etc. And Elizabeth Downs, who was our contact at Emory, is writing in this email, "I hope you're well. We've had some trouble with the state people in Moultrie, and I'm afraid to say they are blocking this implementation. They say, as they have been saying for how many years, they will be implementing an EMR, that's an electronic medical record. Long and short of it is we won't be implementing this. I am so frustrated and ready to walk away. Please excuse me for not implementing all your hard work. I was pretty excited, and I hate to let you down." So, so this as an outcome is a worse outcome from a technology deployment standpoint than the Mental Health Liberia project, where that software did get put in place and did get used. So just reflecting on the successes, how and where each of these projects succeeded, is really a useful exercise. And as you all get going on projects, you want to be thinking, and we will help you do that, about whether your project has risks that are similar to either one of these projects with respect to success. Does it have other kinds of risks? And what can you do to mitigate those risks? And what should you do? So at one, I've had students tell me that they thought that the Moultrie project was actually not a failure. I think for reasons of the kind of experience that it gave the students. And I think there's truth to that. This comes up in service learning projects. Often the learning that happens by students is really quite strong. Achieving the service part, that is really providing something of value to the partner, can be much more difficult than providing a valuable learning experience for the students. So the second project was blocked, not based on a technical reason, but based on essentially political reason and an intent, even if it had been quite difficult to produce an electronic medical record. The Liberia project was successful in that it was deployed and it was used. It was not without its challenges as well, not just in the maintenance, but in the process that clinicians had to go through in order to make use of it. And there's a research paper I wrote about that experience, which I will put into the resources. So if you're interested in knowing more about that particular project, you can read that. So I think back on these projects when when I teach this class, and think about the ways that partnerships and strong partnerships and strong buy-in by many stakeholders is really a critical ingredient, to making sure that technology is appropriate and that it, is sustainable and that it meets a need, and that there are no that all the ingredients are there for technology to be put in place.